52 hours a week, naturally waking up at 4:30 for 5 weeks straight without burning out. Here's how I did it. Hey everyone, now before we dive into the Google Sheet you know I have behind this laptop, I want to quickly take a step back because this is not the first time I've tried to accomplish maximizing work hours. In fact, I've actually shared some of the crashes and burns in previous vlogs, so this is definitely not the first time. However, it's the first time I've come out without burning out. So I'm really excited to share what I've actually learned. Now, my previous record has been 3 weeks at an average of just over 55 hours a week. So the actual average in the past was better, but I was only able to do it for 3.5 weeks. And in all 3 or 4, I'm going to say 3 to be conservative here. I've tried it 4 different times over the past year and a half. And each one of those times I would burn out on week number 4, the Friday. Like actually on Friday, I would not be able to make it till the end of the workday. I just seemed to have some sort of biological limit that my body just threw up its hands and went, you know what, we're done. You're going to get sick. You're going to have a headache. We're going to do anything and everything to make you stop working and actually let us catch up on sleep and have a break. So luckily I was able to go 5 weeks and averaging 52 hours a week and be completely okay. So I'm going to jump into a Google Sheet here. I'm going to show you my exact breakdown of hours, how I tracked all those hours, and then of course the 5 big takeaways. Now, before we do that, I think there is something important that we need to address because depending upon what you've seen in the past and your own personal beliefs, you're probably in one of 2 camps right now. You're either at 52 hours and going, there's no way. Like, come on, you really worked 52 hours? I don't think so. Or the other camp, like, really? That's all you did? You're celebrating 52 actual work hours? So I wanted to share a case study with you. I actually did a full video on it, link in the cards in the description, where a study was done to estimate how many hours people actually worked compared to how many hours they thought they worked. And the numbers are pretty surprising. So if we look at this quick little chart here, you see that the more someone estimated their work hours, the less hours they actually worked in reality. And you see that the actual top here is 55 hours of real work. So for me, with this study and some other studies that I've looked at in terms of just biological limits, 48 is really the max you probably should be doing per week consistently year over year to actually not be too unhealthy. So I viewed 55 as the absolute max based upon these studies looking at what people were actually working. So if you're trying to figure out, hey, I just want to have as many hours as possible and be ahead of everybody else, if you're between 50 and 55, you are ahead of probably 85 to, if not 90 to 95%, I'll say 90 to 95% of the other knowledge workers out there. That was what this study was based on, not necessarily factory work. So there's slight differences there. Let's just go ahead, jump into the Excel sheet, right? So what you're looking at now is the exact same sheet myself and everybody else on the team uses to track their time. And so I fill this out at the end of the day. You know, I'm a huge proponent of time blocking. So I am able to just look at my time blocks and then put in the actual time I spent. So if I have a rule that if I'm away from my desk for more than 5 minutes, then I need to subtract that time. If I get up real quick to just grab some coffee or water, I typically still include that in these work hours. So if you want to be really anal retentive, you can go ahead and take off 2 hours a week, 2 to 3 hours a week for my average time to just account for me getting up to get coffee and water, right? So now let's go ahead and jump in here. You'll notice that there wasn't 1 week. This was my burnout week where I only did 18 hours. And that was because the 3 previous weeks I had to move and then we were replaced 1 week and then I had to move again. The final move was here. And of course, my idiot self thought it would be a good idea to try and continue to work full time while we were living out of suitcases and bouncing around because of some quarantine rules here. So needless to say, I digress. That was a really dumb decision, but we'll go ahead and jump in when I actually started getting productive with week number 1 of this experiment. So you can go ahead and pause if you want. I just wanted to show you this because this is what my time tracking looks like. And so this is how I go through at the end of each day. I look at my time blocks and then I go ahead and enter in the time that was spent each one of these. And then I have a summary for the week. So this particular week was 56. So we'll go over to the second tab we have here, and you'll see that not all of the weeks were the exact same hours. And when we get into the rules, you'll see why. So I did have some rules here, but I'll go ahead and reveal what I thought was more important than not just looking at the total hours, but was also looking at how the hours were spent. And so here I've broken it down into three major categories, and pretty much any business owner can probably relate to one, if not all of these three. So first we have founder time, and founder time is the time that you as the business owner, founder, and leader, you're always going to have those tasks. So even if you delegated everything, you'd probably never delegate this unless you hired a CEO or president to run the company for you. Then number two is going to be manager time. So this is project management stuff and emails, right? So this is making sure everyone has what they need. And technically everything in this time bucket or block could be done by a trained project manager. And then finally we have maker time. So this is where I put things like making vlogs like this or putting together courses, which I'm going to get to when we talk about that this week where I was low and 48. So these are all of those creative things where I'm actually building. So if you think of things working on your business, working in your business, founder time is working on your business, and then manager and maker time is working in your business. Although I would put maker time ahead of manager time because typically what you're doing with your maker time is going to be driving your sales or product creation. So I think that's enough of a breakdown of what these are. So you can see on average, I would spend 13 hours a week on founder time, and then I'd spend an average of 10 hours a week on manager time. That is a huge improvement. I think the last time I did a deep dive like this, I was around 15 hours a week, so I've definitely shaved off 5. And then the creator time or maker time was at 29 hours on average. And so that is something that I was actually disappointed with because the maker time is ultimately what's going to push your business forward the fastest, which is why I try and have the majority of my day focused on maker activities. Now, if I was just working a standard 40-hour work week, then my goal for this maker time would have only been 25 hours. However, I wanted it to be over 30 because I wanted to make sure that as the time went on, I wasn't receiving diminishing returns, as in I was maybe working an extra 5 or 6 hours a week, but it was all going to project management or some lower level task in the founder time, because it is really easy to overplan and overcompensate when you're looking at project planning. It's a trap that I've fallen into in the past, so I wanted to make sure that maker time was the one that was getting the majority of the extra hours. And so I think I did a pretty good job of that. As you can see here, there was one week number 4, where I had to plan for Q4, and so obviously everything in terms of planning and SWOT analysis went into the founder time for that week. But for the most part, I think I can count this as a success. And when you're looking at your own, I would say not only looking at the total number of hours, but also making sure that those extra hours are going to the right place. So just as a quick comparison, if you're interested, I went ahead and tallied up the hours from the first 7 weeks of the quarter as well. So you can feel free to pause. I'll go ahead and do it like that so you can actually see. There we go. So you can actually see all of the hours, so you can kind of compare and contrast. And as a final comparison, I went ahead and looked at the gains. So if we can get all of this on one, nope, I'm zoomed in too much. That's okay. So looking at the gains, I compared the first 7 weeks of the quarter where I was just working at a normal pace versus the last 5 weeks where I was trying to do a sprint, averaging over 50 hours. And as you can see, the average time that I gained was almost an extra workday trying to go an average of over 50 hours. And so I would count that as a good thing, and I will also count it as a good thing. I'm repeating myself a little bit here, but the majority of the extra hours went to the maker time and the founder time. The only thing I think I can improve on in the future is if I try and do this again, where I want to sprint and go over 50 hours, is make sure that the majority of those extra hours are in fact going to maker time, and actually putting some more rules or restrictions to making sure that all of that extra time goes directly into maker time as opposed to vision planning or doing more passion or pet projects on Saturdays, which is something that I allowed myself to do. And by passion or pet projects, I mean building more Excel sheets like this one. So it's all towards the goal, but sometimes it's harder when you get to the hour 45, hour 50 mark, to actually do those really brain intensive tasks. And that's something that I actually learned in week number 3 here, where this was the 1 week where I got really tired. And I thought, you know what? I don't know if I'm actually going to make it another 2 weeks because I really, really feel bad. The other weeks I felt great. I'll get into the rules that I used in order to do that in a moment. But week number 3 was when I was writing a Google ad, or our Google new was when I was writing our new Google Ads copywriting training, and that's going to be a course that we're launching pretty soon. And that was just nails on a chalkboard for me, because trying to take what I've been doing for a couple years now and actually distill it down into something that is succinct and makes sense to someone other than myself was really, really hard. Whereas if you look at week number 1, where I worked 56 hours, or week number 4, where I did 57, I was doing activities that I've done before and activities that I actually enjoy. So week number 1, 56, I actually did a lot of graphic design during that week. And so I was actually able to push easy deep into the 50 hours mark, because those last 7.5 hours was just creating new Google Slides. And it was something that I really wanted to do, and something that wasn't super intensive because I had been thinking about it for a long period of time. It wasn't like staring at a blank page. Whereas with week number 4, and I was able to get to 57, well, that's project planning. And as you know, I really like Excel sheets, and I really like project planning and vision boards and all that fun stuff. So for me, spending 31 hours in a week doing project plans and SWOT analysis, I was on cloud 9. I was having an awesome time. And so that's why I was able to push past and easily get to 57. And I felt better at the end of week 4 and better at the end of week number 1 than I felt at the end of week number 3. So I think there's a tremendous amount of weight that you have to put on those new, harder tasks, and give yourself permission to work less during those weeks, because your brain's just going to recover. This 48-hour week was the absolute hardest out of all of these. So I think that does it for a breakdown of the average, where those average extra hours went. And then of course, seeing how my hours looked down here in just terms of normal work weeks, where I average around 44. So I was able to get a full extra work day out of going to 52. Now, here comes the fun part, or the bad part, and depending upon how you think about it, in terms of how I was actually to be able to do this without it seriously harming my health or my sanity. So I had 4 rules going through this stint. So number 1, the big goal, of course, was to average more than 50 hours a week. So rule number 1, no caffeine of any kind, no stimulants. The only asterisk I have here is because of the training regimen that I'm on. I started taking creatine in week number 4, but technically that I'm only taking 5 grams a day. So if you're a fellow workout nut, then you know that I wouldn't have gotten the benefits until week number 6. So I'm just now starting to feel those, but I feel like just for transparency's sake, I was taking 5 a day. I didn't do the 20 milligrams thing to try and like instantly get results. So I did have decaf coffee. Now, number 2, Sundays were rest days. They were full rest days. I did not do any work. And if I did cheat, those hours were not allowed. They did not count. And when your work hours don't count, it's a lot easier to just look at an email and go, yeah, I'll just wait 12 hours so I can actually count the 45 minutes it's going to take to respond to this. So that was rule number 2. So rule number 3, full night's sleep. And rule number 4, a concrete day close at 5:30 p.m. This was one of the hardest ones, but it leads me into the 5 big takeaways. So that was rule number 4. Big takeaway number 1, having an end day cutoff was the single most powerful thing out of everything I tried over this 5-week period. So I can't take any credit for it. Of course, I've been reading through Deep Work for a second time. I've taken a lot of notes watching the book, right? I just look at it and download the information. No, going through and reading this book multiple times, and one of the suggestions he had in there was ending your day at 5:30. And that's something that I had never done before, because I feel guilty at the end of the day when I still have energy. I'm like, you know what? I could go a couple more hours. Like I can go a few more rounds because my business is not where it needs to be. And if I look at what other entrepreneurs are supposedly doing on Facebook, Twitter, I don't look at Twitter, but if I'm looking at other YouTubers or other Instagram accounts, it looks like they're working really hard, right? And of course, there is a lot of posturing, right? So we take it with a grain of salt. We already went through the fact that most people think they work 70 or 75 hours a week, or actually only working 45 to 50, but it's still really hard to believe that other people are working harder than you and you're going to fall behind as a result of not working. So I'd say that was one of the hardest things to do, but it was the best. And having just that, to copy what Jeff Bezos calls it, putter time at the end of the day, where I just kind of sit around for 3 hours, because I wound up going to bed around 8:30, but I'll get to that in a moment. So from 5:30 to essentially 9, I could do whatever almost whatever I wanted. And it was absolutely game-changing. That's the first time in years where I've had an actual evening per se, where most of the time it's eat and then go back to work. And if you ever struggled with insomnia, then this is something that would really, really help. So that's key takeaway number 1. Number 2, this was an odd one. So in order to make sure that I got a full night's sleep, I did not allow myself to use an alarm. Now, hold on. I'm not saying just sleep in, right? I did say that I was going to bed at 8:30 or 9. And what I found was my alarm was actually a crutch for my bad behavior. So I'm just talking about my experience. I'm not saying don't use an alarm, okay? Don't go crazy here, but just hear me out. What I found was, because I wanted to get past that 50-hour-a-week mark, most days I needed to work more than 8 hours. But when I had that artificial cutoff of 5:30, all of a sudden the only way I could increase the amount of hours I got out of a day was by waking up earlier. But the only way I could wake up earlier is by going to bed earlier, because I wasn't allowed to set an alarm to force myself to wake up. Remember, one of my rules was a full night's sleep, and one of the best ways to guarantee that is to just not use an alarm, because something as simple as, like, let's say, there's a giant highway outside, a car alarm goes off at 2 or 3 a.m. and interrupts my sleep. Well, obviously my body and brain is now going to need more time to sleep. So by not setting an alarm, I always ensured that I got a full night's sleep, and I always woke up feeling rested. And by week number 5, I was waking up at 4:30 a.m., hyped up and ready to go. There were some days where I was waking up at 3 and 3:45, but that was, I just stayed in bed. I'm not going to get up at 3:30 in the morning. I think that's way too early. So I did go ahead and let myself go back to sleep in those instances. But as long as I was waking up after 4:30, I went ahead and got out of bed. And so I highly encourage you to try this, where you say goodbye to that alarm. If you still have to get up for work and you actually have to be in your virtual office at some time, because I'm assuming you're still stuck at home, then obviously still use an alarm. But I had the ability and flexibility to remove that, and that was actually a crutch. And so now the only way that I could actually make sure that I got the extra hours I needed, because I had that artificial cutoff, was by being disciplined and going to bed on time. Was the only way that I could make it work. So I found that actually was really frustrating the first 2 weeks. It was so frustrating, because I was waking up at 7. I was waking up at 7 or 8 a.m. even though I was trying to go to bed at 8:30 or 9. And obviously changing that circadian rhythm is quite a painful process. So number 3, I'm going to blaze through relatively quickly, especially because I've been talking so long, but that is diet really does matter. Now, I've been a huge proponent of intermittent fasting, and I like a high protein, higher fat diet compared to some of the other diets you may have seen. I am in no way, shape, or form giving you diet advice. I know that everyone has their own opinion these days, and it seems like science and diet and fitness no longer go hand in hand anymore. So I will just say that what you eat is incredibly important, and I found that I wound up having a 4-hour eating window at the end of the day, and I eat about 1,600 calories, which is 750 calories less than my maintenance, and I felt really, really good. I have tried keto in the past, and I found that it made my insomnia 10 times worse. So while I am very, very happy with the lower carb, higher protein, higher fat diet, I'm definitely not in the keto camp, because I enjoy being able to sleep, and having some rice and berries at the end of the day does make things a lot more tasty. So for number 4, project focus. The worst thing that you could have happen is you're on a Thursday or Friday and you sit back and you go, what should I do next? So one of the things that was really helpful is having a very clear and concise schedule so I knew exactly what I needed to get done, and I queued up what I'd like to call a passion project if I got done early. So I had a project plan, and then if I was able to finish early, I would go on to the passion project for as long as I needed in order to cross that 50-hour mark, or just until I was done. So as an example, when we were talking about week number 1, I was actually able to finish all my content early, and so the last 7 hours was spent on something that I really, really wanted to work on. But I had planned that ahead of time, and it's paying off because it's a project that I had to do this quarter. So it wasn't something random, but it was something that was different, because something that I also learned in reading this book is part of being able to push past those hours is making sure that not all your hours are the exact same tasks. So you do need some variation, especially when you get past that 40-hour mark. Now, number 5, this is going to be the toughest one. This is some tough love here, but treat weekends like you would treat a weekday. So if you wouldn't down a 6-pack or stay up till 2 a.m. binge watching Netflix on a Tuesday, then don't do it on a Saturday. Now, am I saying you have to abstain from alcohol and you can't watch Netflix or any shows that you enjoy? No, but I am saying that you do need to respect your circadian rhythm on the weekends as well. According to lots of studies that are I shouldn't say lots, according to my own research, I've found that 2 hours later than your normal going to bed time on the weekends is okay. So for me, I normally go to bed around 8:30 or 9. So as long as I get to bed by around 10:30 on the weekends, it seems to not disrupt my circadian rhythm. Now, when it comes to the alcohol side of things, I actually just abstained the entire time, and I'm still on that because alcohol technically is a poison. As good as beer might taste, it does really mess with your brain. And so if you do want to continue to enjoy whatever tasty drinks that you like, then I would highly recommend doing it on Fridays, because that way your body can be fully recovered by Tuesday. It can take up to 3 days for your body to completely process and get back to homeostasis, depending upon how much you drink. Obviously, if you only have 1 or 2, you're probably good by Monday morning, but I'm not being judgmental at all. I'm just sharing how you can still enjoy life and actually maximize your brain's work capacity. And then when it comes to watching, I'm going to be honest, because you're still watching this, so I know you're not going to take this the wrong way. I watched a lot of television. It's not like all I did was sit around and read books on my time off or in the evenings. I watch a lot. I enjoy watching YouTube. I enjoy watching movies, and so I did that a lot, but I made sure that it didn't affect my sleep schedule. So when I went and binge watched some movies or binge watched some shows, I just made sure I did it during the day on Saturday or during the day on Sunday, and still went to bed on time. And that way I can enjoy all of the media that I wanted without sacrificing or borrowing from my circadian rhythm throughout the week, and I was still able to wake up on time. So hopefully you got some value out of this video, and those 5 big takeaways weren't too harsh, especially that last one. But again, it's one of those things. I think the most important takeaway you can take from this is you need to take all this information and test it for yourself. When it comes to business, you should approach it just like an athlete would approach training and working out. This isn't something where you just get to sit around and say, oh, today I work 5 hours and next week I'm gonna work 12. You really do need to plan out and start to view your work hours and your work as if you're creating some sort of workout plan. And I think that's really the best way to approach this, and make sure that you mold yourself into your own version of a high top performer. So thank you so much for watching. If you're still watching, go ahead and hit that like button and comment below with any of your questions or insights, or if you have none, then just go ahead and comment below with what your ideal work hours would be in terms of your max or your minimum. I'm very curious to hear what you view and what your goals are. So until the next, you know what to do. Keep building the business you love.